What's up, y'all? You are listening to For the Artists, a podcast brought to you by Creative M Projects. I'm your host, Melissa Sharee.
And I am your co-host, Eric Seats.
Yes, and guess what, y'all? We have a feature. I know y'all are excited about that because we are. Oh, C's got a sign. We got a special guest. Now, before I even unveil the name, okay, of this special person, even though you're looking at him if you're watching, I'm about to just shout out some of the amazing things that he's done. That's like my favorite word because everybody we bring on is amazing. I really do believe that. All right, so this person who's a guest started playing his instrument at 18 months. What? He became a professional at the age of 6. This year marks his 40th year as a musician. But if you look at him, you're like, yeah, for real? Like, where did those 40 years go? Because you don't look a day over, I'm going to say 29. His parents are both musicians. Okay. His father was a bass player. His mother is a singer. And they had a band together. We'll talk about that. That's family style for nearly 20 years. He is a graduate of the one and only Seats. Hit it off. What's the name of the high school he went to?
The Los Angeles County High School for the Performing Arts, LACHSA.
Yes.
Shout out.
Shout out, otherwise known as LACHSA. Let's see. He is, and we haven't told you yet, but he's a drummer, y'all. Okay, and he was a drummer and co-musical director for Al Dia con Maria Conchita. Did y'all like my accent? An afternoon talk show. I love it. Y'all clap on Telemundo. He has performed with Aloe Black, 2-time Grammy award winner. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna mess up the name. Astru Sierra. He can correct me later. Grammy award-winning group Gestal, Salvador Santana, Maria Conchita. I mean, the list goes on, you guys. He's performed at over 100 venues, musical festivals. What? And he started his own band, Gonzophonic, in 2015. Y'all give it up for the one and only Alexander Gonzo Gonzalez.
Yeah, Al.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. That was a great introduction. And as they say, the check is in the mail for that. That was amazing. Thank you. We're done.
We're done. I love giving those introductions. You worked hard to do all those things. You should feel all the amazing goodness of who you are, because I think you're great.
Oh, thank you. And I'm very grateful, completely grateful, because, a lot of people start this journey and they don't actually ever see it all the way through. And that's the one thing that when I met Eric in high school, when I was 15 years old. I think Eric might have been 16 or 17 when we met. That was a thing that years after we left high school and we would reconnect, we would always be like, man, so-and-so is not doing it anymore. Did you hear so-and-so? And a lot of the people that we went to school with that were in our high school didn't actually continue once they left the high school, which was, it is what it is, as they say. But, for those of us that are still in it, for me to look back and say, man, I've been in this for that long and still have the passion for it and still have the desire to always improve and get better, I'm completely grateful.
You know what? I can't even let that statement go by with just asking you off top. What is it? I mean, how have you hung in there for all this time? Like, what has kept you in the game when so many other people have fell off? And I call it a game, but it's not a game. You know what I mean? Like, kept you doing your passion.
Well, the first thing is, I've been a drummer more than I've been anything else in my life, even a father. I have 2 kids, right? So music has just been part of my life from the day they brought me home from the hospital. My dad had a full band rehearsal because they were going on the road the week that I was born. And they couldn't cancel, people were... So like the day that I got home from the hospital, he had a full band with a horn section, the whole thing, because it was during that disco era and it was a big band. And that was the day that I was born. It was into music. So for me, I love being a musician, and all of the best things in my life, all of the wonderful people that I've met, all of the best experiences I've had have all been through being a musician. So for me, it's like, I'm in this till I decide to not do it, or, I can't play anymore. But to me, it's about just focusing on having this great job. I get to be a musician. I get to play drums. I get to have the best seat in the house. Eric will tell you that. Eric's had the best seat in the house for so many amazing things. I've seen him over the years on television, and seats, it's the best seat in the house, being the drummer. It's the most pressure. It's sometimes it's a thankless job, because if you do great, most times people won't say anything. If you suck, people will let you know. You get that look, Seats. When it's not right, people are looking at you. You're like, hey, man, dude. So, but when things go great, sometimes people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that was good. And you're like, man, you have no idea what I went through to make this happen.
I have to jump in, man. This is my fellow colleague right here. I've watched this dude grow up. Like he said, high school, man. I remember him coming into Loxa, and you came in as a professional. And while you were talking just now, I was reflecting, like, I wasn't surprised that you would end up playing with all that long list of people that you wouldn't. Some people you can tell early, your ambition, your drive. You, like I said, you were unlike me. You came into high school already gigging. You've been gigging with your family band. I guess I was just starting to to do professional things during that time, to my recollection. But man, that's what it's been about you. And I can say that knowing you this many years, you've been consistently professional. And you still look the same age, like Benjamin Button in this piece. But hey, I'm proud of you, and I know I can say that. It's been that long, and you're doing a job well done. To see you grow into a father, and just to remain consistent is not easy to do. That's a professionalism associated with the gift. So kudos to you, Kat.
Thank you. Alex. That means a lot to me, because when I got into high school, I always say I was like a bull in the china shop, because I had been playing like rock music in nightclubs, and when I got to high school, I had about 8 or 9 years of actual, like, I was doing shows and playing. But when I got to high school and I saw you play for the first time, I was like, all right, this is next level, because you were playing in a way that was like Dave Weckl, all those guys that were happening at that time. And then you had your own style on it. And the cool thing is that of everybody that was there, you were the only one that actually extended a hand and was like, hey man, let me help you get through this, because you knew I was going to be the only drummer for the next couple of years.
Right.
And instead of, because you didn't owe that to me. And this is something that I think is very important about being a musician and helping younger musicians. And this is something that we've always, in your way with Next Great Drummer, and in my way when I come across drummers in the community that are just getting started, it's like, help out. And you took me under your wing, and you used to hang with me. You used to go jam. We used to go in there, and a lot of times you wouldn't play drums. You would play piano, and you would let me play drums, and you would play congas, and we would just jam and hang. And that was so valuable to me, because just by the notion that you were giving me, like, hey man, I'm trying to help you through this. And it made the transition for me when I went into my 11th grade year, and everything fell on me. I did so much, my knees went out like halfway through I think it was like 2 or 3 months into the semester, like the first semester, my knees went out because they had me playing on everything, because I was the only drummer. Because when I got there, it was you, right? It was Danilo. Shout out to Danilo Torres. I think it was Chris. There was the three of you, right? And you guys were graduating, and I was coming in. And once you guys graduated, I was it. There wasn't any other drummers. So it fell on me, but it was thanks to you taking that time to, like, and we never talked. I didn't ask you like, hey man, can you help me out? You just kind of remember at one point, like, hey man, let's go get some lunch. Let's hang out. Like, just kick it with me. And you started like showing me just like, here's how to deal with this stuff, because it's going to fall on you. And I've always been so grateful about that, just because you didn't owe that to me, but you did that, and it made a huge difference. And when I left, when I was getting ready to, graduate, I tried to do the same thing, like pay it forward. Like, hey, like, you guys are the next generation. You guys are coming in, even though it's only 3 years, but you know, that circle changes, you know, it's evolving. So I tried, and you know, one of the drummers that was in that was Tony Austin. And I reconnected with Tony recently, and Tony's been working with Thundercat, and he's been the drummer with Kamasi Washington for the past, and they're just crushing it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was cool about when I talked to Tony was like, hey, he's like, hey, I appreciate like you looking out for me, and you just kind of just leading by example. And I think that was what you did for me too. You led by example. You were always a polite, well-mannered guy. And I remember you were always just like, you know, you didn't curse. I don't even think I remember you saying any bad words back in the day. I don't remember. And like when you did, you'd be like shy about it. Like it was like, oh, but you know, you know what I'm saying? No, you know, you were good, man. And your mom was always nice to me too, because I remember sometimes I would have to call, and she would always be super sweet. So again, if anything, I'm here to say thank you for looking out for me all those years ago.
Right on, Alex.
Appreciate that, and it means the world to me to say you're proud of me. So thank you.
All day.
Thank
and
you,
know, and you know I mean that.
I know you do. I know you do.
And thank you for showing up to, you know, for my events, my Next Great Drummer events, and all those different things. And every time I extended the invitation, you showed up.
Hey, man, I was honored to be there, and that first one was crazy. It was so hot, and the kid passed out, and the drum heads would popped off the drums because it was so hot that day. It was ridiculous, but we got through it. You know, it was amazing.
Trial and error.
You're right. Hey, but we got it done, right? We got a show done. Fighting the elements. It was crazy.
Dang, y'all, I'm feeling the love. This is what it's all about. Now, Alex, after you left high school, in terms of, you know, how Seats was there for you and kind of, you know, took you under his wing and showed you support and love and all that, did you have an awareness that you needed to continue to find that from different people as you moved throughout your career?
Well, the funny thing is that it sort of happened naturally. So I've always been one of those people that seeks, like, I like mentors. I like having people that have more experience than me, that have been in the trenches. And so in a weird way, it sort of found its way to me. But once I got out of high school, I was already busy because I had a family band. And I actually didn't technically graduate from LACSA. I left early, but they worked out like an arrangement with me, and I was able to still get my diploma. And so the demands of having that band with my family and that kind of pressure, it was like I hit the ground running. And once I got out of high school, it was just busy. You know, I was always something happening, something going on. And then I think about 3 years after I graduated, we got a television show. And then that was a whole different thing too, because now you're dealing with that schedule, that demand, coming home at 2:00 in the morning, getting up at 6, 5 days a week. But in those times, there was always somebody that would kind of come into my life. And I was very fortunate to have a few mentors that came in and just helped, and not even so much teaching me like a lesson. It's like I was saying about Eric, it's just showing me just, you know, how to conduct yourself. And that's very important. You know, if you're going to be a professional at anything, it's not even so much about your talent, it's how you conduct yourself. That's what separates a professional from an amateur. You know, we've all been in situations where we get there and they say it's going to be X, Y, and Z, and you get there and it's A, B, and C. And you got to figure out, okay, how can I make this work? And as a drummer, Eric knows, you get there and they tell you, oh, it's going to be this drum set. We got you everything you need. You get there and it's some janky, beat up. Where did they find this drum set? Unearthed somewhere in the bottom of the ocean. But guess what? You got to make it work, right? And those are those moments where you get there, and that's what separates the professionals from the amateur. It's how you conduct yourself. So a lot of the things that I learned didn't necessarily come from drummers, but it came from other musicians working in situations where I got to see the good side of people and how they act, and the bad side of people and how they act, and how certain people that drink how they act, how certain people that do other substances, how they act, and it's a lot of things. I just basically I kept my mouth shut a lot of the times and kept my ears and my eyes open. And that was a very big thing, just to be able to see things. Because again, Seats, you know, you've been in this, you know how musicians can be. You got a lot of musicians that are super chill and they're good, and then you get those other cats. Some they get a drink, some they get a wrong mix, and then all of a sudden you're like, what is going on? What happened here? And
that's just not in music.
That's in general, yeah.
That's in with, you know, human being, but yeah, definitely in our field. Oh yeah, what we end up gravitating to is trust. And as a, you know, talent is one thing and professionalism is another. So when you can have those things combined into one, and that's a blessing. But it sucks when it's either or, which is probably half the time. You know, it's like, dang, if you know, I can't depend on that, even though this person is the, you know, that would be a choice. But unfortunately, I understand now why people are where they are and will be where they will be because of things like that, you know, professionalism, period.
Yeah. So that was to go back to your question, Melissa. It was like, yes, once I got out of high school, it was like I said, I just always was, I'm very observational, first of all. That's just my nature. So I always like to just see how people act in certain situations. And again, being a musician from the time I was 6 years old, by the time I got to high school, I had seen a lot, probably some stuff I shouldn't have seen, be honest with you. But so, you know, I had that experience. And then once I got out of high school, it was like, okay, what have I learned from the 3 years in high school, plus my previous years, and how can I apply that going forward and continue to be, you know, dependable? Like you said, Seats, it's a big thing to be dependable, to be someone that if you get that call, and a lot of times the calls come in last minute, you know, Seats, how many times has that happened where it's like, oh man, we need a drummer and you got to learn 20 songs and there's no rehearsal, you know, and you got to show up. I mean, a lot of what I've been doing in the past 3 or 4 years has been that very situation. You know, our drummer got drunk and broke his arm. Okay. And we have a show tomorrow night and it's out of town and we're not going to have time to rehearse. Can you do it? Yes, I can do it, you know? And then to show up and be confident and show up, because nobody wants to hire a musician and they show up and they're like, what am I doing? And you're like, oh man, really? Like I said, and especially the drummer, man, there's so much pressure on being a drummer. And I said, I've done shows where people have no idea what I've went through to get to the place, to set up the drums, to learn the material, to play for a half hour. And then everybody's like, oh, the guitar player was great. Did you hear that guitar song? You're like, man, are you kidding me right now? Like, seriously? And I had to play with tracks and a click and the headphones were cutting out and the snare stand loosened and the beater of the bass drum flew out. And my drumstick broke and nobody noticed. Yeah, no.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It really is.
Dang, but I love that there's such a value in the fact that you started so young. I mean, I think that is because we're speaking to, or we're you know, yeah, we're working to speak to a younger audience. And it's like the more that you're able to experience at a younger age, it's like hopefully you can get to a level of maturity a little bit faster that will prove to be in your benefit on the back end. When people, you know, wait later, sometimes it takes a while still to change habits and pick up new things, and you just can't rock fast enough versus if you've been in it for a while.
Yes, there's something to be said about just experience and sticking to something. You know, I mean, if you look at the great athletes, anybody who is recognized in their field as being the best, nobody started overnight. It takes dedication. It takes focusing and almost in a sense being selfish, because you're not going to be at everybody's party. You're not going to be at all the birthday. I've missed so many birthday parties and a lot of things that I had to put aside, even in my relationships, of saying, look, just so you know, the drums and music comes first. And as long as you know that, you know, I'm not going to be able to say that I'm not going to be somewhere, but chances are and this has happened to me many times, I'm sure Seats, again, this is something that's happened to you. You make plans and then you get a call for something and you're like, I can't really say no to this. This is what I do for a living. This is what I do. So, you know, for people that are starting out, and I get this question a lot too, because again, I love to be a mentor to younger musicians and drummers that are coming up. And over my years, I've had a few kids that have come up to me and I've seen them develop over the years and get gigs and they start, you know, playing. And they always ask me the same thing. It's like, how do you do this? It's like, well, if you're passionate about it and you really feel that this is what you want to do, you got to stick to it. And you got to go through all the hurdles and you got to go through all the ups and downs. Nothing's going to be easy. There's no direct, easy, guaranteed approach to this. It's a struggle. It's a grind. It is.
What's funny is it's a never ending lesson.
Yes.
There's no book that we've read that has got us thus far. A lot of this is trial and error, like I always speak on, and experience is the best teacher, hands-on experience. I've never really asked anybody what their story was because I kind of already knew that wouldn't necessarily be mine. So I never really felt that, okay, let me go read this stack of books written by other people and how it worked out for them. I respect their get downs. And a lot of times we don't even want to even know about the person until we consider them that to be at some kind of level. But just seeing is believing and talk is cheap kind of thing and maneuvering through this, because what's funny is we're still doing that to this date. We're still, it's a part of your characteristic. It is that has a lot to that will determine like everything, won't it? I mean, in every capacity, not just this music, but especially music in this creative field, because I think everybody is frowned upon, really. You know what I mean, compared to other outlets and different things like that. Music has not really been like growing up. I don't know what your two testimonies are, but it's people always, it seemed like there's more distractions than not, or people trying to motivate you to, hey, keep going, keep going. There have been motivating people along the way, but not the majority, it seems like, not with music.
Well, and you know, like in my family, my dad growing up, you know, he wanted to be a musician because he didn't start like I started. He started when he was, you know, I think in junior high school, and he was raised by his grandmother, and she was like, I don't want you to be a musician, get a job, you know, because and it actually, in a sense, it's like being a musician, because people have this, people that don't really know about all the work and effort that it goes into, they think it's always like you're partying all the time. And I've had even family members be like, oh, you must be like, you know, partying every night. I was like, if you actually knew the amount of work that it takes for me to just get to a gig, when I got to bring my drums, I got to get there early. I got to set my stuff up. If it's upstairs, downstairs, I got to do it. Then after I'm done, the guitar player is usually the first guy out of there. Oh, I got my gun. Drummers are the last guy there with the wing nuts, and you're like, okay, let me put my cymbals away. And it's a lot of work. And by the time I'm done, I want to go home. I don't want to go out and party and drink and have, that's not, to me, it's like, that's not, the perception of that is like, that's not correct, you know? And even if you try to do that, it's going to catch up with you at some point. Cause I've seen that happen with musicians where it's like, yeah, party every night. And then it catches up with them. Right. But yeah, like you were saying, Seats, is like you're going to have your people that are going to support you, which are usually fellow musicians or people that are artistic. And then people that have never experienced what we get to experience, the three of us, in being artistic, you know, going out and performing for people, they look at it like, well, what are you doing? I've had people literally say to me, like, when are you going to get a real job? And when are you going to, like, what you do is a hobby, right? And I've been like, what do you mean by that? Well, it's like, well, it's not like a real thing, right? Like, I go to work. And I'm like, yeah, I go to work too. Like, yeah, but you don't get up at 7 o'clock every morning. I'm like, yeah, but while you were asleep, I'm out working. Like, that's how, you know, but yes, to a certain extent, it's like, I've had to deal with that, as I'm sure all of us have. And anybody who's artistic has had to deal with that. You know, there's going to be those people that are going to try to be like, well, when are you going to do something for real? And, you know, even in like, you know, cause I'm, you know, Latino, Mexican, in the community, there's the, you know, the old school people were like, I don't want you to, you know, no quiero músicos aquí. Like, basically, I don't want any musicians here. That's, you know, it's like considered to be bad for some reason because of the, you know, the idea that you're partying and drinking and womanizing all the time, which is not the case. But thankfully now at the point that I'm at, I've been able to eliminate a lot of that just by recognizing certain characteristics in people and saying, you know what, if you don't like what I do, that's cool. And you can kind of hate on that, but you can do that outside of my circle. Because the people that I have around me right now, and this is very important, is to surround yourself with like-minded people. You don't all have to be musicians. I have friends of mine that are actors. I have friends of mine that work on movies. I have friends of mine that are news reporters. And the thing is like, we all support each other.
Correct.
And that's important because, hey, it's good to know, like you said, see, it's everybody's grind is different and everybody's path and destiny is different. And you can't model yourself. Like when I met you, Eric, and I saw how great you were, I didn't go, oh, I want to be just like him. It inspired me to be better. It inspired me to shed more. But I knew that my path wasn't going to be the same as your path and vice versa. And it's important to carve out your own path, to believe in what you want to be, get inspiration from whatever you find inspiration for. I'm inspired by so many drummers from the past, the present, you know, and at the same time, it's important for me to go, I want to carve my own path and I want to be my own person. I'll take influence and I'll take inspiration from hundreds of other drummers, including Eric Seats, because like I said, when I saw Eric when I was 15, I was like, holy crap, this is a whole different thing, because he was playing a style that I had never played before. When I got to high school, I had to play jazz, I had to play big band. I had never really done that before. I came in and I was like, yeah, you need to rock and roll. And I think the first time I actually played drums in high school, I think, Seats, if I'm not off, when we would start the year, they would do the thing where they would kind of let everybody play and you would rotate, remember? So they'd be like, okay, drums, you get on and play for a little bit, and then the next guy gets on, and then they kind of rotated all the musicians just to kind of see who was at what level. And I remember when I got on, the first thing I saw is everybody went like this, like, oh my God, he's just so loud. And I was like, and I thought I was doing great, right? And I got off, and I remember Seats was like, hey man, that was, because you were always so positive. Like, hey man, that was really cool, but it's kind of loud. And I was like, oh man, okay, yeah, I got to change. I got to adapt to the environment. I got to step it up a little bit, you know? And, but again, it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the experiences, is to have that and to learn from it.
Hey,
you remember that?
Hey, man, let me just say this. Let me let it out. He was a fireball coming out of there, but it was your energy. It was where you were coming from. It was just, that's what's so beautiful about that, because all of us, you saw how diverse Loxa was. Not even just the other arts, but, you know, within music, but the other arts accumulated, you know, the very few that were there, it was just so, it was well-rounded. And so what's funny is you were very necessary though to be there at that time and to play the other, you know, I remember you playing a lot with Brandon Hill, and it was a lot of funk stuff. And so you were appropriate for what we were just trying to see where everybody was going to fit in. So those lessons are, but that was a part of learning dynamics. But that was the beautiful thing about what we had to do. We had to wear many hats early, but that's called being well-rounded and being diverse. So I appreciate that, all of those moments.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And then, you know, once I figured out, okay, like I got to tone it down, I got to adapt, and, you know, and following, again, seeing what you were doing. And I was like, okay, it's going to take me adjusting to it. But that was the beautiful thing. I had a year to adjust, like I really did. And that's going back to what we talked about earlier. You even working with me, just hanging with me, just like, let's go jam. Because a lot of times you would have thought, hey, man, we're on a college campus, we could be getting into a lot of trouble. We didn't. We'd actually go play music. We'd go in the practice room, and you'd be like, hey, man, let's set up the congas. And I'd play drums and you'd play piano, and then I'd jump off the drum kit and I'd go play some congas. And that was a lot of it, just jamming. just
Yeah.
working on stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And but again, I'm so grateful to have those years at Loxa, because one of the things that I realized not that long ago was that a lot of the best things that have happened to me in my life have come from being at that school. I still have, like yourself and Melissa, people that I'm close to, people that have helped me out. You know, Uli from Ozomatli has been a big help to me, you know, because we have that relationship to go back. Like, man, we've known each other since we were 15, 16 years old. Anand, Bennett, and Dante Pascuzzo, two of the most brilliant musicians I've ever come across. And they were genius level at 15 or 16 years old. You know what I'm saying? To get to mix it up with those guys. And I think about a few years ago, we got together for the first time in like 20 something years to play. And it was one of the best things I've ever done. We only did it once. We were trying to do it a few times, but it was difficult to get everybody's schedule to lock in. But we got it done once. And it was so wonderful to have that experience again. And even just in the current relationship that I'm in now stems from being in Loxa, because my current girlfriend is best friends with Elisa Gomez. You know Elisa from high school. And my current girlfriend, Elisa's dad, is my girlfriend's godfather. So it's a crazy like connection, and it all stems a lot from going to Loxa. And originally, destiny plays a very heavy hand, and I'm a firm believer in destiny and fate. I had auditioned for Hamilton High School, and they had accepted me. But at that point in the early 90s, there was a thing was like the quota, which it was a stupid thing, but they had to do it. So because I was Mexican American or Latino or Hispanic, however you want to call it, they couldn't accept me because their quota was filled on Latinos for that year. So they basically said, well, we can't take you this year, even though you passed the audition, even though we'd love to have you, maybe come back next year. And just on a weird turn of events, this paper showed up at the place that I was living at. My mom got it and was like, hey, there's this high school for the arts at Cal State LA. And I went down there and auditioned and I got in. But that's because it was meant for me to be there. And even the fact that we're having this conversation now stems from us meeting at Loxa. Yep. So, you know, those 3 years there were so important to me and so valuable. And even at this point in my life right now, I still look back and go, man, what would have happened if I wouldn't have gone to that school?
Man, I love those divine moments. They just stir up my soul down deep. Whew, okay, I got a question though. So help us understand the transition. You were in a band with your family for 20 years, and then you started your own band. Did you start your own band after the family band? Did it happen at the same time? And you tell us about that, because you were born into the family band, but you chose to start your own band, and that's a whole nother beast, starting your own band.
Well, essentially, to condense a long kind of story, as they always say, long story short, but the family band pretty much started when I was about 7 years old, and it went till I was we almost went about 20 years. It was about 19 years. And then to answer your question, no, there was a huge gap from the time that we did our last gig as with the family band. We did our last show in Vegas. And I think at that point I had just gotten married to my ex-wife, and I had gotten married. And it was kind of like, we just felt like, hey, we've done everything we could. It's time to maybe just let it go. And so it took, God, probably about over 10 plus years before I even thought about starting my own band. It just never dawned on me. You know, I always had aspirations of like certain things that I wanted to do musically, but it just never crossed my mind. And then through a kind of a series of events, there was a place in Pasadena, and I think Eric, you may have come down there. It was the coffee shop, and it's no longer there.
Yeah, you brought me down there.
Yeah, to Zona Rosa, and yeah, I missed that place. Oh my God! So I had started working there, and I was playing there so often that the owner came out one night. He's like, man, who are you? Like here all the time now. And I was like, oh, day, man, I'm just here, you know? And so he basically said, well, look, man, here's my number. If you ever want to play here on something you want to do, let me know. And I was like, cool. And so my birthday was coming up, and I was like, you know what? Let me just I'm pretty good at putting a band together. I mean, I can figure it out. So let me just book the date. Let me see if I can even get the date. So it was like the Thursday right before my birthday. And I contacted him. I was like, hey, look, I have a thing I want to do. Is it cool? And he's like, sure, no problem. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? I go, I really don't know, but you're going to have music. Just, I don't know what it's going to be, but it'll be music. Music, like it'll be something, you know, even if I just play by myself, which would have been boring, but I would have done it, right? And so around that time, I had met a guy by the name of Nick Luca. And Nick is a great guitar player, amazing keyboard player, and an incredible recording engineer. He's like a musical Swiss Army knife. I call those kind of guys. You know, Eric, you know those dudes. They can just, like you, man, you can play bass. I've seen you play keyboards and organ and drums and bass. I know, but you can do it. You know what I'm saying? You can engineer a session if you had to. That's not how you make your living, but you know, you have the knowledge. You can do it. And that's very valuable. So I met Nick Luca, and we hit it off. And so the first person I called when I got we're gonna have this day, we're do it. I was like, I need a guitar player. So I called Nick and I said to him, would you mind doing it? You know, there's no money really involved, but it's for my birthday. And he was like, absolutely. And he goes, coincidentally, do you need some songs to play? And I was like, yeah, actually I do. And he's like, man, I've got like originals like crazy. We can, you know, whatever. Oh, great. And then earlier that year, I had met a guy who's now, both of these guys are now my dear friends, but I met this bass player who I worked with on a project, and we just hit it off. And his name is Ki Kim. He's a Korean guy, but one of the funkiest dudes I ever met, man. Just, and we were into the same music, and we just vibe. Like the minute we met, I just knew. I was like, I'm going to be working with this guy. You just, sometimes you have that snap where you're like, I don't know what it is, but we got something. And we started, at that point, we started working on so many different projects together, because anytime somebody would ask me, hey, do you have a bass player? I would recommend Key. So we ended up doing like 5 different gigs in that span. We were doing jazz, we were doing this, we were doing Latin stuff, we were doing everything. So I go, I need a good bass player, obviously. And I called him, and he was like, got you. So that was sort of the beginning of what would become my band. But at that point, I didn't have a name for it. So we just called it like Gonzo and Friends, because my nickname for the past 6 years has been Gonzo. So there's people that know me, like you, Eric, has never called me Gonzo. He always calls me Alex. But people that have met me in the last 5 or 6 years only call me Gonzo, right?
I will.
Yeah, well, you can always call me Alex.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I was there.
Yes.
For your birthday band part. And shout out to Joe and Paul Falcon.
Yes, I was
we met up there together. And that y'all were killing. It was killing. But a part of that is, and you know, it doesn't take much for that, the mentality for you to put a band together and to get it done and to get that rapport established with the business owner. Because I did the same thing a few times in Pasadena as well.
That's right.
Shout out to the Mix, the restaurant. Just getting in good with the owners of of those establishments and working together with them and seeing what can be figured out. We create nights, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that they appreciate your mentality and the ability to draw a crowd, and to bring business to them. That's what keeps us rolling. So it goes way beyond the talent. And Melissa did the same thing at the in the marina at the establishment at the warehouse.
That's right.
Consistently, and to attract those people, and they usually end up being very few times it's the talented artsy crowd, but a lot of times it's our other relationships, like you said, knowing the actors and knowing the sports people and knowing the whatever the other fields are. But just your spirit attracts people as well to the event that you feel like creating. So right. I commend you. I commend her. But that's what that's a part of the responsibility that comes with calling successful, you know, getting events to think it up and then to make it happen to after, you know, to where it's a post thought and people are coming up and thanking you and commending you on a job well done. That fuels you to get another event done. And you know, and I know you two can relate because that's who us three are on this phone. And I do credit a lot to, same as you, Alex, a lot back to we got to look back through the trial and the errors that we've been through. Everything is it's all a lesson learned.
Yes.
And then you can see the growth and see, oh, here's what I'm not going to do next time, or here's what I will do next time. But and it's still nothing to ever have figured out, because, you know, just as sure as whatever we're working on right now, we're all still right back in that same boat. But that's the beauty of life.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really that simple in terms of just reaching out to somebody that you know. I mean, like, Alex, one person, you reached out to one person, right, after somebody that you connected with, and then it just kind of all snowballed from there and fell into place. It's like sometimes we get in our own way by overthinking things. You know, I know I've been guilty of that. They'll start with a small idea, and then I start like overthinking to the big idea. And then you just sabotage yourself and you don't even want to move forward, because now you just took this small idea and you made it so complex that you don't even know how to move forward. It's like, just start small and work with what you have and what's in front of you.
Well, that's one of the advantages of having been in a band with my family for 18 years, because my dad was one of the best band leaders that I've ever worked with, because he came in from the old school, which meant you had everything. Like, if we did a gig back with my family band, my dad would write out detailed instructions for everybody according to their area. So if a guy lived in the Valley and we were playing in the South Bay, this is before, you know, the GPS and all the stuff on the phone. My dad would pull out the Thomas guide and figure out, right? And at rehearsals, he would give everybody, like, here's what time you need to be there. This is what you should wear. Here's the driving instructions to get you there. Like, detailed. Like, when we would rehearse, I still have people to this day, musicians that worked with us, because we had a lot of musicians that came through the band in almost 20 years. And they go, man, I've never rehearsed with somebody that got through as many things as I did with your family band. Like, we would rehearse 20 songs in like 2.5, 3 hours. And I've been in rehearsals in seats, and I'm sure, Melissa, you've been in rehearsals where you're one song and it's like an hour and a half, and you're like, what are we doing, right? But again, my dad had a way of being able to connect with musicians, and a lot of the musicians we had, some were professional and others weren't. And he would adapt to, like, if a musician wasn't that strong, he would adapt and connect with them and almost in a way become like a teacher to them. So by the time they left our band, if the guy came in and only knew 5 songs, by the time he left our band, he knew 50, right? Because we did a lot of covers. So my dad would literally teach guys, like, okay, it's an E minor with a sus, you know, do that. And in like minutes, he had a way of connecting with musicians. So all of those experiences was very beneficial to me when I decided to start my own band, which, again, when I started it, it was a one-off. It was just for my birthday. The response was so good. And I brought in Eric's and I's dear friend, Paul Falcon, because I've known him since he was a kid in that family. And I brought in Uli from Ozo Motley, because, again, connecting Laksa, I was like, man, I got to have him here. And so we did it the first time, the response really well. And I was just like, okay, I'm good. I'm not worrying about this. It's not going to happen. Well, that music venue was seasonal. So they would have live music from May through like November, because then the weather would change, because it was an outside venue. So we basically kind of closed the season. So the following year in April, the owner now hits me up and goes, hey, remember that thing you did in November? And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to do it again? I'll give you, like, I'm booking the season. I'll give you whatever dates you want. And I was like, well, I wasn't planning on doing this again, but hey, let me figure it out. And I came back, and it just, this time I came back, I brought Carlos Santana's son Salvador in, which was awesome. And he jammed with us. And I started bringing in guest musicians with the same guitar player, Nick Luca, and the same bass player, Key. And so I started bringing in all these incredible musicians. So I had Victoria Theodore, who was with Stevie Wonder for a long time. I had Rod Castro play with us, who's one of the busiest session guitar players in LA. And they would just come in. And because we were kind of improvising stuff and we were doing covers, they didn't have to worry about learning music. I was just like, you can vibe with this. It's easy. And everybody loved it because it was kind of like catch as catch can, but it all sounded great. And so it kept developing. And finally, my good friend Nick Luca, who's a guitar player, he says to me, he goes, I think we got something here. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I think we should go in the studio. And before I knew it, we're in the studio, we're recording stuff. And then he literally goes, we should just make this like an actual band. And he was the one that named it Gonzophonic. Again, I had no idea about any of that stuff. And he actually even started the Facebook page 5 or 6 years ago. He did all that on his own. He's one of the best like musical partners I've ever had, because he's one of those guys that just jumps on things. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily had to ask him for it. He just did it. And so the band officially has been together for about 5 years now. And the majority of the gigs that we did were at Zona Rosa. And once we lost that place, and then, the COVID came in, it was like, I had to put the band project on the side for now. But, as soon as we can get back to playing again, that to me is my dream project, because I get to play the music that I've been wanting to play. And I've gotten to play a lot of great music over the years, but there's still stuff that I'm like, man, I don't get to play this. And this is stuff I grew up being a fan of funk and soul and R&B. I grew up with Tower of Power playing all the time. That was my mom and dad's favorite band. I think the first concert that I ever went to, they took me to see, was Tower of Power at the Roxy. And I think they put me on the stage. I was in diapers still. I don't even know how they got me in. And so I grew up with, and that was something that I wasn't getting a chance to play as much. So the beauty about having my band is that I get to play whatever the hell I want to play, which is great. And I know Seats, you did your own thing, your own project. And the great thing about it is, like, I love being in service for other people's music, and I'm always there to help somebody, because being a musician, and especially being a working musician like Seats and myself, you got to jump into whatever somebody's doing and vibe with what they're doing. So, and it's great to do that, but having my own band is giving me the chance to just go like, I want to play this song. And then I just say to the guys, here, this is what I want to do. And they go, okay, cool. Yeah. And then we do it. And it's so gratifying, because I get to be my own person in that context. And it's really great. And it's some of the best like musical experiences I've had in the past 5 years has been playing with my band. And getting to just, one of the cool things about playing at that venue, Zona Rosa, was that because they didn't charge people, it was open air. It was like, anybody walking down the street could come into that alley. We got to play for a lot of people that just happened to be walking through. And one of the things that I started to notice was like, man, we get a lot of random people that are showing up here. Yes, I would invite people down like yourselves and any of my friends. Hey, I'm going to be there. But as we started to do it more often, we started to get a lot more random people that started coming up and like, hey, when are you guys going to be playing again? Hey, we really like that. So it was a confidence booster, because I kind of figured, like, if random people that don't know who we are, that are not even here to listen to a band, stop and give us their time, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Some people would stay for the whole set and enjoy it. I was like, well, this is good. This is, for me, I'm good with that. I'm cool.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something real special about being able to play something that you created and came up with.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing like it. So, well, we somehow lost Eric, but he may come back on. He may not.
Okay.
He somehow dropped off into the abyss. But I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to talk about some of the things that you have coming up. I can't have you get off before we do that. And you're putting the finishing touches on a project. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, part of this whole thing is, I knew when I was coming up, which is now my 40th year, but I wanted to do something special. And then COVID happened. And so the plans that I originally had had to be put on the side because it involved live performance. And 5 years ago, when I had my 40th birthday, I had a big thing at the Baked Potato, which is here in Los Angeles. It's a world famous, as they refer to it, the world famous Baked Potato, but it is a respected jazz club. A lot of great musicians have played there. And so I was going to do that again to celebrate my 40th year. And then, like I said, you know, live performances, everything is put on the side. So I had to kind of figure out, well, what can I do? Something to kind of mark this anniversary. So this past December, my cousin, Gene, is an incredible photographer, videographer. And so he kind of said to me, he's like, hey man, like, you know, if you want to do a video or something,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can make that happen. And I was like, all right, I thought about it. And I said, the wheel started turning, and I'm a kind of person that's like, when I figure something out, I want to do it. I don't want to sit on it too much. So then it started, I was like, okay. And one of the advantages of COVID in a sense was that people's schedules were a lot more open. So people that I didn't have access to or wouldn't have had access to, and even my schedule for that matter, it was like, well, we're open now. So let's do it, including my cousin, because my cousin had been on the road for the past couple of years because he's the photographer that goes on with the bands. So he travels with the bands. So he had been on the road more than I had been in the past couple of years. So he was available. And I was like, if I got my cousin, I got to get a studio. So basically what I did is I rented a incredible studio. We set up my drum kit, and I went in there and shot like a drum solo piece. And then we had to put it on the side for a little bit. And then we just started getting back into getting it together. And I'm pretty happy with the results. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get it out. The plan is to get it out by next month. And it's like a 6-minute drum solo piece. Nothing fancy, but it's something that just at least kind of marked the occasion. And also because of the fact that I've been so busy in the past 5 years, I didn't have time to do this. And that's another thing that comes up. I'm sure, Melissa, you've been through this, is like, there's things that you want to do, and then you start getting busy with other projects or other things come up. And then you kind of have to put those things on the, as they say, the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
But again, one of the benefits of this whole pandemic thing was that, well, now all of that stuff that I was involved in, and I was at one point playing in like 5 or 6 different projects and doing sessions and doing rehearsals. And some of my days would be fully booked, rehearsal in the morning, afternoon, and then 3 or 4 hour gig at night, the next day sessions. So it gave me the chance to really go like, if I'm going to do this, now's the time to do it. So we went in and we got it done. And so we've been putting the finishing touches on it. So it still needs to be mixed. It's been edited and the color grading is all done and whatnot. So like I said, we're close to having it finalized. And then once it's finalized, I'll figure out when next month it's going to be out, but it will definitely be out.
Okay, so that's what you've been working on. Yes.
Yes, sir, man.
Nice. You've been
There you
taking
are.
advantage of all your time. Yep, Seats is back. I was just
Seats is
asking Alex while you dropped off into the abyss, but you're back. Alex was talking about what he has going on, what's been, what's coming up, and he's been working on a pretty rad.
One thing I know about Alex is that even if we don't talk to each other for a few years, I know that you would always be working on something, producing something, getting something done. Because that's never not been you the whole time. So I guess it just depends on what it's called this time. But like I said, when you come to mind, it was just when she told me our guest this week, I'm like, there's no script needed. All we have to do is reminisce.
That's it.
And ask him what he's working on now presently, but he will have an answer. So,
I love the perspective that you took though, in terms of just like the COVID and the pandemic, because, as I speak to different artists, they're all in different places in terms of how they've handled it. And, I think the ones that have been able to take the situation that we've been kind of placed in, right, with unexpectedly, and to just shift the mind in terms of, you know what, I was so busy before, but now I'm not as busy. And you know what, people are available now that weren't available, and just really maximizing that in a positive way. Because otherwise, some people have gotten in a dark space behind it. But, I think it's great that you've been able to move forward and take advantage of it.
I know a few people that I work with that went into that dark zone
Mm-hmm.
and stop being creative. And that's what's been, I'm like, wait a minute, now's the time to really get creative, because there's no excuses, right? And even for me, like I said, the past couple of years from 2018 up until the pandemic hit was the busiest that I had been. And I mean, it was to the point where I got burnt out, because a lot of the things that I did was coming in and having to learn, 20, 30 songs, doing that show, and then the very next day doing that again, but with a different artist. So in a given week, I'd play reggae, I'd play hip hop, I'd play singer-songwriter stuff, I'd play with my own band. There was a lot of material that was getting put into the database here. And so when the pandemic hit, it kind of gave me a chance to get some perspective and realize I was starting to get a little burnt out. So I took it in a positive light of like, okay, now I have some time to just be myself and relax. I don't have the pressure of, because I always want to do my best. That's something that I tell the people that are very close to me. I'm my own worst critic, but I'm also my biggest supporter. And that's something that I try to tell younger musicians too, is like, oh man, I play and it doesn't sound as good as you do, and this and that's. Like, don't worry about that, because if you stick to something long enough, like we talked about, you're going to get better by proxy. It's just the nature of things. Tiger Woods didn't become the greatest golf player by doing it the day before. It takes dedication. But if you're going to be critical of yourself, don't get to the point where you're constantly beating yourself up and not recognizing what you have going for you, right? So, there's things that I can listen that I've done and go like, man, I wish I could have done that differently. And that's always the nature of any artist. But at the same time, I can also recognize when there's things that I've done, I'm like, man, I got that good. I don't think I could have done that better, right? So one of the things that was good about having this time off was that I got to refresh and not feel like I was burnt out. And again, wanting to do my best for everybody, I put a lot of pressure on myself. And in some cases, I put more pressure than even the gig warranted. If we played one song, or if I had to play an hour and a half, I put the same amount of effort. I never like, oh, I'm just playing this one song. It doesn't matter. I don't even need to learn it. I would shed on that for hours just to make sure I had it right. Because if somebody, drummers are expendable in a sense. And what I mean by this is, you have DJs, you have loops, you have, nobody really needs a live drummer. And see, this. I mean, the fact that somebody calls me and says, hey, I want you to be on my song. I'm always like, you want me to record drums on your song? Like, you don't need that. I don't tell them that. That's the worst thing to do. Oh, you don't need me. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But I mean, in my mind, I'm like, wow, the fact that they want me to record drums on their song, that to me is awesome. Thank you. So I only want to give my best. If someone's hiring me and they're an artist that's just starting, and I've worked with people that are just kind of getting their footing, I put the same amount of concentration into that as I do if I'm working with Asdru or like even Aloe Black. And to me, it's like, I give everybody the same. I don't shortchange anything, because, hey, this is what I do for a living, and I want to make sure people get my very best. I don't make excuses. If I had a bad day, if I had a good day, I wake up, I don't feel good. No one that's hiring you needs to know that. Or do they want to know that? They want to know that when they hire you and they call you, that you're going to show up and you're going to kill it, right? And there's been times where I've done certain gigs where the elements, things happened. And, hey, we do a show with the tracks cut out halfway through the show. I can't stop playing and be like, oh, hey, the tracks aren't working. We're playing at the Pomona Fair Garden in front of 10,000 people, and be like, oh, hey, I'm sorry, I can't. It's like, I got to make it work. Now, those are the things that are very important to understand. Like, hey, this is, at the end of the day, if this is what you do for a living and this is what you're serious about, you have to give your best. I've seen Eric play over the years with Patty, with Layla Hathaway, when you put that footage up of DMX with Saturday Night Live, I had forgotten about it. And I was like, that's right. I remember seeing that when it aired live. And I was like, that's Seats. That's my boy Seats killing it. And you were hitting those drums. You threw those drums a beating, right? But that's because you gave it your best. And that's the one thing about, again, going back to what I said earlier, the difference between a professional and an amateur is consistency. The best musicians that I've worked with are consistent. Doesn't matter when, where, what the circumstances are, if there was catering, if there wasn't catering, if their flight got canceled, if they couldn't find parking, whatever the case may be. And that's, to me, one of the reasons why I've been as successful in the small pool that I'm in. I'm not in a large pool, but I'm in a small pool, but I've been successful in that because when it comes down to it, if someone calls me tonight after we're done with this and they say, can you do a gig tomorrow? And everything sounds good to me, right? Yeah, I can do it. When I get there, I'm going to give them my best. I don't make any excuses for anything. And that's why I take what I do seriously. I prepare. If I have to learn a song, I will learn that song. I will write a chart out. I will listen to that song 100 times. I will drive myself crazy, but it also helps me give a better performance because when I get on stage, and Eric, you know that when you're ready to go and everybody's looking at you and your job is to count that in, if you're like, oh, 1, 2, 3, you got to come in and be like, here it is with that grin where you like, I got this. Because right now I'm in control. That's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize. The drummer's in control. Drummers are cool about it. We'll be like, oh yeah, no, it's all right. Oh yeah, no, go. The guitar player is great. Oh, that keyboard solo was fantastic. But the people that really know, we're like, man, that band wouldn't be anything if the drummer wasn't doing his job right, his or her job right? So again, it comes down to preparation. It comes down to wanting to give your best. And so again, I put a lot of pressure on myself. So having this time away from that gave me the perspective to go like, all right, let me take some time off. Let me refresh. And during the summer, last summer, I started doing a live stream where I was part of the house band. And it was the perfect timing for that because I had a few months off and I was excited about doing it. And I did 8 weeks of live stream television that was on YouTube and it went really well. And then after that, it sort of, I started the focus on what I wanted to do for my 40th anniversary. And then getting back to the whole thing about the drum video idea, that's where the sort of seeds were starting to go like, well, what can I do? Because I can't do a live show to celebrate that. What can I do? And one of the things I've never been able to do is like an actual proper drum video, not iPhone footage or not footage that somebody got from the audience from 3 rows back and you can't see who the drummer is because there's somebody in front. No, that's me, but really we can't see you. You know what I'm saying? So it was an investment that I made into myself. It was the best investment I made. And, you know, like I said, once it comes out next month, you know, I'm nervous to put it out because, again, I'm so critical of everything I do. But at the same time, I've had some good response from the people that have seen the rough cut of it. And again, it's only 6 minutes and people are like, hey, man, this is great. And I was like, okay, cool. All right, I'm going to put aside all my inner artist anxiety that we all have, right? Because we've all done our own projects. Melissa, I know you've done it. Seats, we know you've done it. Sidio, right? You know, you have that thing where you're like, man, is this good? I don't know. Like you start this, like you said earlier, Melissa, like you get into your own head and you start overthinking things so much to the point where you're like, man, do I even need to put this out? I shouldn't put this out. Never mind, right?
Yeah.
That is very unhealthy for us as artists. We need to trust our vision, trust your gut.
Yes.
Because the minute you start to take surveys and observation too much and try to dissect it and understand it immediately, I don't think that's fair to the art. The art is brave, the art is bold, and we need to keep in mind and at the forefront the very things that we're impressed with. When we look at something, we hear something, we're like, and you can hear like this person does not care what we think. They just did, you know what I mean? That's what we admire. So that's what we have to do. And so be bold and brave. And, you know, and you don't, I get the nervousness part of it, but that's the business savvy of it too. But art wise, you gotta know that you're a dope drummer, you're a dope producer, musician, and you know what you're doing. So people wait. Actually, how about this? The responsibility on your behalf is people need what you have for them. They don't know that what you're about to present, but somebody needs it.
And
So
that's
it's
Yes.
no, go
so
ahead, Cease.
that's our responsibility as artists to just, we don't take surveys, we give, because music, those people will surface until, and you know, we find stuff. Music will find its way through here. You know, we don't always have to know our customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, you have 40 years of experience and passion that you're about to share in a way that nobody else can. And regardless of whether or not it's, you know, perfect or, you know what I mean? It's like it's for somebody. And I personally can't wait to hear it because I know it's going to be dope and it's going to be fire. So you're going
You
to have to
already,
make sure that we know
Thank you.
how you have to tell us how we can see this video when it's ready.
So basically, it's going to be on my YouTube channel, but for anybody that's interested and want to know when it's going to come out, just check out my Instagram page, which is at Gonzo Drummer 75 on Instagram, and I'll put the details of when it's actually going to be out and the link to the YouTube page, and that is one thing. And then there's a couple of things that have come up the pipeline because now that the vaccinations are starting to happen and live music's going to start to pop up again. There's been a few things that have come up that are interesting, and I can't really talk about them, but musically, which is really crazy, is they're both on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One is like, classic rock blues kind of thing, and the other one's like hardcore, like rap hip hop. And the cool thing about it is that I would feel equally comfortable doing either one of those things. But there's still things developing, and that's why one of the other things that that I've learned to do is not necessarily focus on what I want to do more than letting things kind of just happen. Because I think as artists too, we tend to put a lot, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. Like, what am I going to do? Who am I going to work with? And a lot of times the stuff that's come to me has just happened naturally. There's things that I've been a part of where I was like, how did I even get this? I don't like how, but they happen. So in one sense, having this time off and now getting back into the swing of things slowly but surely, I'm learning to just kind of go, hey, look, there's things I want to do, obviously, and there's certain artists and certain genres of music that I haven't done yet that I'd like to jump into. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of just letting things happen, because even the things that are coming my way that are sort of in the pipeline potentially are things that I didn't actively pursue. They sort of made their way to me. And I take it like, okay, if this is where the universe wants to send me, if it's meant to be, I'll be there. And when I'm there, I'll be like, I'm here. Now, what can I do to make this great?
Sweet. Okay, so people can find you on your Instagram.
Yes.
And if they wanted to subscribe to your YouTube, do you want to shout that out, or do you just want them to go to the IG?
Well, you know what? Because I don't have the information for the YouTube right now. I should have been a little more prepared for that. But it's on, and I also have. That's the other thing that's been really good. Before we wrap up, because I've in the last couple of years, I've stepped up the amount of time that I've been recording and being in the studio, because I met a great, and again, one of the things that's really important too, I want to say, especially to the younger people that are listening, is that you never know the people that you're going to meet when you meet them, where they're going to end up. And sometimes it's the quiet ones that you're like, they don't really say a lot. And then a couple years down the road, they're a big shop, producer. And I know one that's on the other end of this conversation, Eric Seats, who was quiet. And then after high school, it was like, yo, whoa, what's going on here, my man? Like, dude, but I'm just saying, and Eric, this is like, you never quite know, like when you meet people, how they're going to have an impact on your life. So a few years ago, I met a great producer by the name of Greg Cortez, and Greg and I immediately connected. We are born in the same week of November, so there's already that going for us, the astrological sign connection. And one of the things that was cool is he got into a situation where he needed a drummer, and he called me the morning of and was like, "Hey man, I have a session. There's no money, but I can hook you up with some percentage points and whatever. Could you come down here and just record some drums for me?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." The session went really well, and at the end of it, he was like, "Hey man, I really appreciate what you did for me, and you know, I'm gonna bring you in on some more stuff." Well, 3 or 4 years later, we've had 12 songs be released with all these different artists. So because of that, I've actually put together a Spotify playlist, which for right now, a lot of musicians, and it's funny because since I did it last year, I've had a few drummers that be like, "Do you think I should do that?" And I was like, "Dude, if you have the catalog, even if it's 5 or 6 songs, it's promotion. Like an actor has a demo reel, musicians should have a musical demo reel." And Spotify, the great thing about it is like it doesn't cost you anything to put it together. So the playlist is kind of like a collection of stuff that I've done over the 25 years with the current stuff, going back to the Family Band, which was the very first album I ever did. So I do have that, and that link is on my Instagram page as well. And then what's going on with my YouTube is we're gonna kind of redesign it, and so that's going to happen before I put out the new video, because I kind of want to, you know, the YouTube page I've had has been, it's been a while, and it's got some cobwebs on there. So we need to clean it up, and you know, because when I put out this video, I kind of want to start fresh almost, and get rid of some of the stuff that's on there. It's like, we don't need to have that. And the idea going forward is that now, since I did this first video, I want to start continuing to do this, because not only for myself, but some of the companies that I've been with for many years, they've been asking for this stuff over the years, and I've just never been able to really do it. And I have high standards, so if I do something, I don't want it to be just like some camera phone in a dark garage, and you know, you can't hear stuff, or stuff is distorted. So that's why when I did it, I made sure, you know, we shot it in 4K. I went to an actual beautiful, great studio. The drum sounds were fantastic. Everything was top notch, as top notch as I could do with my limited resources. You know, I didn't come in with a huge budget, but sometimes you don't need that. You just need to know how to manage your resources, right? We've all been in those situations where it's like, man, this thing I'm thinking of is probably would cost me 10,000, but I've only got 1,000. How can I make it work? And I love those kind of challenges, because we've all been there, you know? And so again, I learned a lot from doing just this one video. Just doing that, I learned so much, because there were things that I didn't anticipate, even with all the experience that I have over these 40 years. As they always say, you don't know everything. So I learned a lot from that, and it was a great experience. So that little 6-minute clip that we put together, to me, is not so much about the content more than it was, I saw it through. Going back to what we talked about earlier, it was like, you get in your own way so much. So if I would have overthought it, like I've been overthinking it all these years, I never had anything until now. But because it is my 40th anniversary of being a musician, I was like, again, there's no better time than to do it now. If we're going to do it, let's do it now. So I'm excited about it. And you know, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this. This is like my first podcast interview. It's nice. It's nice to talk to people without having to have a mask on. I'm so like into the mask thing. I thought, well, do I have to have one for this? I was like, no, I don't have to have one for this. This is the most ridiculous thing.
No, man. Well, congratulations on your 40th, Soldier. I've watched it unfold, and we love and appreciate your energy and your consistency.
Thank you.
And your professionalism, man. Keep going. You know, I'm here for you when you need me. That's what we do. We support.
We support. First of all, we thank you. We're honored that you came on. Okay. We're super grateful. I just want to shout out your IG one more time in case somebody missed it. It's Gonzo Drummer 75.
75, yes.
Right. So y'all, You have been listening to Alexander Gonzalez, aka Gonzo in the house. This is For the Artists, a podcast brought to you by Creative M Projects. Seats, you got anything to add?
Be blessed, everybody. We are out. See you next week.
We're out. And remember, keep creating from the inside out. We'll see y'all next week.
1